So how did I start out as a barber? How did my beginnings begin? Well, that actually started with my older brother. Him and his close friend at the time were cutting each other's hair, I think, or his friend was cutting his hair and giving him the encouragement to try to cut hair too, I believe. And this is when he was around 8th grade. So seeing my brother cut my hair, I definitely thought that, well, that's pretty cool. You know, he was getting pretty good. That was the thing. Yeah, I wish he would have stuck with it, because he would have did some really cool. I think he would have been a great barber. Bar none, I think he would have been a great barber, because you could see naturally he was really doing pretty good. He was cutting my hair at the time. He was cutting my little brother's hair, and his fades were getting pretty solid. I mean, at the time, this was in the mid 90s. It looked pretty good. I didn't know. I was still very young, probably 10 years old or so. And because of that, later on, I had a neighbor in my neighborhood, a good friend of mine at that time. I believe his name was Abe or Gabe. Sorry about that, but can't remember his name. Again, I was so young. And we had another friend, another neighbor, who also was kind of crazy, and he let me and my other buddy cut his hair. And we kind of tag team him. He did one side, I did the other, and the fade, it became a fade. It was a skin fade, but we couldn't figure out how to take out the bottom line, even though it was faded. So it looked pretty solid, especially this being our first haircut. Well, that gave us the encouragement to keep going. So we decided not only are we gonna cut his hair from time to time, but we're gonna cut each other's hair. So then he took a turn cutting my hair, I took a turn cutting his hair. But what happened with that is that he was really jacking my hair up. So not only was I cutting his hair, but I would have to go home and then fix what he did to me. So as a 11-year-old more or less, I'm now doing double duty, right? So I definitely progressed. So within that, I would say within a week and a half, I already knew how to cut hair. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. By the second week of me fixing his mistakes, it got to the point where I was like, don't worry, I'll cut my own hair and I'll just cut your hair. And I just kept progressing. It was crazy because I knew it became natural for me. It was a very natural progression that I was able to have cutting hair. It was just like, this was, I could problem solve how to take this line out, how to improve the next one. So constantly I was getting better and better and better. The way I did my hair, the way like my mind understood how to cut hair, was I took a rubber band, put it around my head, faded, because I would do skin fades right off the rip. Put the line there, raise it up a half an inch, make another line, the half line, raise it up with the one, and go from there. And then I would just clean it out. So by the second week, 2 weeks into it, I started saying, well, now I don't really need this rubber band, and I started being able to cut without using the rubber band, which was awesome when you really think about it, because I was self-taught. Even with my brother, I didn't really see him cut hair. He would cut my hair from the time to time, but for whatever reason, he just kind of cold quit it, stopped. I think it had to do a lot with, at that time too, my parents were, they were getting divorced. So he ended up moving with my father, and then me and my younger brother stayed with my mother. So probably that could have been a big aspect of why he just stopped cutting hair. So I just kept going. And this whole time I'm cutting hair, doing these fades with Walmart clippers. So I really learned a lot about tools, and we'll get further into that later on. But I learned a lot about tools just because I didn't have anybody to teach me how this works. Again, a lot of it was just problem solving in my head. And it got to the point by the end of the summer, because this all happened in the beginning of the summer of me going into 7th grade. So I was about 11 years old. And then by the time summer was closing up, it got to the point where I was cutting a lot of my friends' hairs in the neighborhood. So much that my mom started complaining, like, hey, you gotta charge because you're using all like my electricity in the garage. So I was like, all right, I was so nervous. What am I gonna do? Am I really gonna have to charge my friends? So I ended up charging them $3, and I was, I started making I was an entrepreneur at the time. Doing designs. I used to do Nike checks. I used to do Wu-Tang signs. Was I perfect? No way. No, I was not perfect in any way. But I did definitely have enough ability that people trusted me. So much so that it started getting to the point where I started doing haircuts or fixing haircuts from people who were going to actual barbershops to get their haircut. Yeah, a kid was fixing adult haircuts that were supposed to be professional barbers, and I was getting that almost on the weekly. And I was just so nervous, like, why are they coming to me? I understood I had a natural ability to cut, but it was still kind of like so new. A lot of it just had to do, I was trying to be cool. I was trying to, oh, this would be cool. Girls love me because I can cut hair and stuff. So it was, I had my little reasons stuff to do it, but for the most part, it was a lot of fun to do it. At a young age, being able to cut hair and just being able to do things that most kids my age were definitely not doing. And I didn't start off doing like the easy haircuts. I started off doing the skin fades and low fades and high fades, and remember trying to figure out what all that stuff meant, because I wasn't hanging out at a barbershop. I was just literally doing all this from what I thought in my head. I felt like I was inventing stuff. So it was pretty cool. So by that time, I would say I never ever went to another shop again to get my hair cut. It was just me cutting my hair. I started cutting my brother's hairs. And by this time, I'm probably in 8th grade. And it's just like, now I have facial hair. I remember I started having a little goatee right here. So I started, shaping this up. Now I'm going to school and I got a little goatee. By the time I was in 8th grade, all of a sudden I had a full beard. It was crazy. So I was lining myself up. I felt like I never went to school without a haircut. Maybe once or twice, but even in those times that I went, it was like I just shaped myself up anyway, so I still was looking fresh. Yes, I did have hair back then. I wish I had like photos and stuff that I could show you guys, but yeah, I had hair back then. And so by the time I was like middle 8th grade, I transferred schools, which sucked, because if I would have stayed in that little area with all the dudes that I was cutting already in my garage, and then, some going to high school and stuff like that, I could have had a huge clientele as a little kid cutting hair. You know what I mean? So by the time I finished 8th grade, we had moved over to another city, in the same county, but it was another city nonetheless. So it just was me, and then next thing you know, I played basketball my whole life. That was my whole goal: play basketball, get a scholarship. So I started cutting people around. They found out I can cut hair. I was cutting grown man's hair. They were knocking on my door for me to cut their hair. So I was just getting good, really good. Again, I still was getting I was still getting that point where people were actually asking me to fix other people's haircuts, which was still mind-boggling. At this time, now I'm charging $5, so I done moved up the ladder, right? I went from 3 to 5. And all through high school, like, I was doing haircuts, like, before people were doing like the whole Caesar everywhere and then fade out the back. Like, I felt like I was doing that early on. I remember my friends like, why do you always want to do that? I don't know. I always thought that looked way better than doing it, and then rounding or squaring it off. I just liked the way it looked. And I still wasn't in a barbershop, so I couldn't compare what I was doing. The only difference was that, like, how I can compare is like if I was at school and I would see other people get their haircuts, I would kind of look at it and be like, okay, why did that person do this way? It's not like the barber was there to explain it. I didn't have none of that. And then we moved again, and all through this time I was using, like I said, Walmart clippers. I didn't even have edges. I was literally using Walmart clippers. I was opening them up, learning how to tinker with them, adjusting the blades, making them sharp. I remember cutting, because I'm not cutting inside my house, I'm cutting in the garage, I'm cutting in the patio. And if I live in Florida, so it's humid as hell. I used to have to get to the point where I would have to stop cutting, put my clippers in the fridge because they were like just scalding hot. Yeah, it was crazy like that. And I used to even do haircuts where the people be sweating so much, and I'm doing a skin fade. I could barely see what I was doing until the next day when they went to school. I was like, damn, I hooked them up, because the hair would just be sticking to them. And then next thing you know, my brother hooked me up, man. Gave me my first professional clippers. It was the Andy Masters, the classic ones. I actually still have them. I'll show you a picture of them, or a quick little video of them. But I still love them, but they don't work anymore. But man, those things like elevated my game to the next level. I was able to do stuff that I couldn't. It was a little bit more difficult because I was using inferior machines. So I love the Andy Masters. And by the time I finished high school, I ended up one day, and this is part of, like I said, my testimony, but one day I finished school. I had offers to play basketball, but I was too stupid in high school that I didn't finish. I had to graduate in the summertime, and because of that, a lot of my offers went away. And then it was the middle, I would say it was leaning towards the end of the summer, and now I feel like I don't know what I'm gonna do in my life. I know I'm not cut out for this 9-to-5 job crap. It's just not my cup of tea at all. So what I ended up doing was crying out to God. Like, I remember sitting on top of my mom's Bronco, and I was just like freaking out because I didn't know what I was gonna do. And it was like 10:50 at night, sitting on top of my mom's Bronco, and I was just like looking up, looking at the stars, and like praying to God, like, what am I supposed to do? What's the purpose in my life? I don't have anything anymore. Like, I'm not even in high school. I don't have a scholarship. I don't know what's gonna happen. And it's not like I got an audible voice and told me, oh, this is the grand plan for you. I didn't have any of that. So I just kind of put my head down, went up to my room, and fell asleep. But the amazing thing, this is how God works. I ended up getting a phone call about 8:25 in the morning. I get a phone call from an assistant coach who now got a head coaching job, and he's asking me, hey, did I ever sign with anybody? And it's like, no. So he's like, you want to sign with me? Next thing you know, I got a scholarship. So now I'm heading up to Gainesville to go to school to play basketball. Not UF, I was playing at Santa Fe. And so I spent 2 years there, still cutting. Now I'm cutting up my teammates' hair, much like I did in high school. I cut a lot of my teammates' hair in high school, but now I'm cutting their hair, and obviously I'm cutting mine. I would walk through the hallways, or as I'm going to class, I used to have people like, yo, who cutting your hair? And I was like, I cut my hair, and they're like, hey, can I get a haircut? But being a student athlete, man, it's just tiring. And I just like, no, I don't have time for that. Like, I just, anytime I was like, I wanted to go to sleep or something. I was not wanting to cut hair. More than I already was. Like, I was cutting my teammates' hair and stuff like that. So I was constantly improving. And it got to the point after my second year, I just got burnt out. I got hurt in the first 2 years. So missed half of a season my freshman year. The second year I started like, probably, I would say, missed like 10 games, hurt with a stretch fracture on my foot. And basketball wasn't fun no more. I realized, like, I'm not gonna get to the next level, so I'm done with this. And one day the assistant coach started screaming at me, telling me I'm not hustling, when I knew I was busting my butt. And I was just like, yo, I'm done, I quit. Which sucked, because I kind of regret it in a sense, but at the same time I don't. I regret it because I never quit anything in my life. And then I don't regret it because a lot of stuff came later on because I wasn't in school no more. So it was like, one of those things that my purpose later on, I prayed about stuff, and I realized, like, God was telling me, look, I brought you there because at that point, that's when I came to know, who Jesus was as my savior and stuff. So he got me to that point and showed me that, look, you did what I needed you to do. No, so you don't have to do this no more. So I felt comfortable, and I left. I quit like almost the middle of the end of the year. Season was still going on. We probably had probably like a handful of games left, but I was just done. I didn't want to be there no more. I'm not a student athlete. That just wasn't my thing. But I remember my coach telling me like, yo, you can't quit. Like he was worried for my life. Like he was like, what are you gonna do? And I just told him like, man, I don't know. I could cut hair. I could go to barber school, get my license, work at a barber shop. I could do something. And he was just like, what? And I was like, yeah, I don't need this no more. This ain't what I need anymore. So he seemed so worried, so confused, which is cool because a couple years, after, he ended up getting a job at university by where I was working, and some of his players would come in. They were describing the guy, and I was like, "Yo, is your coach so and so?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh snap, that was my coach in college too." So I found out his email, and I was like, "Hey, guess what? I did everything I told you I was gonna do." So boom, he was like, "Oh, that was great." So you never know where this stuff's gonna take you. But yeah, that's pretty much how I became a barber. I went to barber school, which sucked, but I met a cool dude. He taught me a lot. At this point, I learned how I learned, but then I finally met someone who showed me like shortcuts and stuff that I never would have thought. His name was Tony, and he was just like one of the fastest barbers I ever seen. I thought I was fast. Like I thought I could do fades fast, and this dude was just on another level. And I just learned a whole bunch from him. It was like I stopped doing how I cut hair, and I just learned how to do everything how he did it, so that I learned the multiple styles, which is another thing. When you master one style, try to get to the next one and go from there, and then master that one, go to the next one, because the more variations of how you do a certain haircut you can do, the better your haircuts will become, because not all haircuts are meant to be cut exactly the same way. So that's one of the things that I learned, having someone who I can finally learn from, which was awesome. And I definitely did that with him. He showed me a lot. We were real close for a while, and then life happens, and he went his way, I went my way, and that was it. It was like I just been cutting hair forever, man. I'm 35 years old right now, so I've been cutting hair since I was 11. And before I went to a actual barbershop, I started working at a barbershop. My first time was when I was a junior in high school. So that was pretty cool. I worked for probably like 2 or 3 months, but it was only like on the weekends, and it was a lot of learning experience, because now I got to see how other people did their thing. So I learned from that. That was great. And each step has been just an amazing part that I never necessarily expected, but God definitely had a plan early on for me, and he showed me that I had a natural gift to do this. So for those who don't have it naturally, just gotta work harder for it, and you'll get there. Because I've seen people who definitely don't have it naturally who became really outstanding barbers, and that's key, is they worked hard at it. And a lot of times you just wait for that light bulb to click. When I was in barber school, I didn't learn anything from them besides learning how to use scissors, which I was grateful, but I picked that up really fast. I was fortunate enough too that they recognized that I didn't really need to be there. So I actually was there for a few months, and they moved me through because they realized this dude, let's get him out of here so he can work full time instead of working part time and going to school full time. Most of you guys that know, when you go to a barber school or some form of cosmetology school, whatever it is, you're there for, it's almost like being in high school. You're there for 7-8 hours. So they told me, look, reach this number and then we'll work with you from there. So that was cool. But even after that, I didn't get my license for years later. It was much different than it was today, where you just take one test. Like, it was much more different. But hey, at this point, that's pretty much my story. That's how I became a barber, and started as a young man, and I'm still doing it today. So let me know. I'm gonna have some interviews with my friends. Obviously, I got a ton of friends I know. I think it'll be cool to get their perspective how they became a barber. So I'll make this a series. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If this is your first time running into my video, maybe you want to subscribe, hit a like, and I'll see you around.